All right, guys, today we got complex numbers, also known as imaginary numbers usually. We can use the number I. I don't know if we talked about the number I in a previous class or not, but lots of uses, lots of things. We're going to talk about it right now. First of all, what is I? I stands for the imaginary number. The imaginary number is the square root of -1, hence why it's called imaginary. You all know that you can't take the square root of a negative number, so that's why it's imaginary. Okay, we have one number, we say, okay, that's the square root of -1. So because I is the square root of -1, that means I squared is -1. So anytime you see I squared today or tomorrow or the rest of your life, it's -1. All right, start off pretty simple. What it does, what complex number does is it gives us a chance to take the square root of negative numbers. So really the square root of -4 is square root of -1 times 4. The square root of -1, that's a definition of I, and square root of 4 is 2, so it's just 2I. So what it does, I'm not going to break it down that way every time. Basically, I makes your square root become positive. Okay, so like I'm going to take an I out of this next one and just make it I on 72. Let's break down the 72 like we always do, like 36 times 2. So I get square root of 36, which is 6, I, and a square root of 2. And you need to write it in that order. We're going to always put our I right in front of the radical instead of at the very beginning or at the very end. Sometimes if you put it at the end like this, it kind of looks like the I is inside the radical, and it is not. Okay, they're going to go through some more operations with you. The first one is it says addition here. So when you add complex numbers, you just add the real parts, the 8 and the 5, and you add the imaginary parts. It's real difficult. Okay, so 3i, that's all there is to it. Now when you subtract them, don't forget that this minus sign actually changes the signs of everything, and you're distributing the minus sign basically into the second parentheses. And I'm going to add like I did a second ago. Okay, I'm going to combine the real parts, that's 4, combine the imaginary parts, that's -1i or just -I. All right, we're going to multiply them together. Now watch this slide very carefully. When I multiply these, like on this one, it's going to distribute. If I distribute those, I get -24i plus 4i squared. Here's how I need you to watch this slide. You're never allowed to leave an I with an exponent in an answer. Okay, so you have to take care of that exponent. And don't forget what I squared is. I squared is really -1, which means that's really 4 times -1, which is -4, and then -24. Now notice how I wrote that one. They always want you to write your real part first and your imaginary part second when you write your solutions here. Okay, I did the next one on purpose. It's a FOIL, just kind of review FOIL a second. So first is the 9 times -4, that's -36. The O is the outer, which is going to be 63i. I hope you're following me here. I is the inner, which is going to be positive 8i. And L is last, which is -14i squared. There's a couple things we can do here. We can add these two together. That's 71i. And also have this I squared. So it's really -14 times -1. Remember, that's really a -1 right there, which makes that a positive 14. And I would be done, except you're going to add the -36 and the 14 together, and you get -22 plus 71i. That's a good one. Make sure you understand that. I'm going to watch that part one more time. All right, then the last thing we're doing is we're going to solve equations where the I is going to be necessary. So, for example, this one, I'm going to do the square root method. I'm going to move the 4 over, and look what I get. I get a -4. So when I take the square root of both sides, don't forget your plus or minus sign. First of all, there's a negative inside, which means I got to pull out the I, and that leaves a 4. The square root of 4 is 2. So plus or minus 2i. So now you can start to see some uses of the I or the imaginary number. Used to would have put no solution right there. Okay, but now with the complex numbers and with i's, I'm sorry about this, but now we can actually do solutions. So one more, smooth the 20 over, make it -20, divide by the 4, make it -5. And again, square root method, let's take the square root of both sides. You get plus or minus. On this one, all I can do is take an I out because I cannot break down the 5 at all. Don't know the square root of 5, can't break it down, just stuck there. All right, that's all we got. Hopefully that made some sense, and we'll work on it like we always do tomorrow. See you then.